Thousands of people in southern Thailand are fleeing the path of the worst tropical storm to hit the area in 30 years. Storm Pabuk made landfall in the early hours of the morning local time, sending trees crashing into houses.
The storm is now moving across the south of the country, affecting popular tourist sites.
This was just the start of it. Superstorm Pabuk, meaning giant catfish, is, in the words of Thailand's meteorological head, simply huge. It hit the two northerly islands hard early on in the day. By noon, it was starting to close down the island of Koh Samui as well. The roads were empty of traffic, and winds of 50 miles an hour or more were blowing down trees close to the sea. The emergency services were out in force, though in the hours of daylight the number of injuries was still quite small and only 2 deaths had been reported. Yesterday, thousands of visitors, Thai as well as foreign, tried to get off the islands while they still could, but some stayed, either because they couldn't leave or perhaps because they wanted to see what was going to happen. Sam and Miranda Abidaya from Chester came to Koh Samui to celebrate his 30th birthday.
We were able to get out and stock up pretty quickly, so we've filled the room full of food. We've got as much protective mattresses up, taping the windows, doing whatever we can to keep the room safe, and really just riding it out.
To be honest, no one really knows what's going to be happening here in the next few hours. The weather seems to be changing all the time. The rain, which was drenching just a few minutes ago, has suddenly stopped, but the wind has come up pretty fiercely. Tonight, though, the storm proper is just about to hit Koh Samui. What's certain is that this superstorm is highly unusual for this time of year.
12 months on from a devastating fox attack, a penguin population in Victoria is on the increase. Nearly 1/3 of the bird population at Warrnambool's Middle Island was killed last year when foxes beat the penguins' famous guard dogs back to the island.
In fact, I don't think we're going to do this story. We're going to move on to the issue of pill testing instead, which obviously...
More important matters?
Well, no,
we'll come back to penguins.
Yeah, absolutely.
Penguins are very important
it is
too.
very controversial, of course. Now, a member of the ACT Legislative Assembly says pill testing at music festivals could lead to more deaths. Well, 5 people have died at festivals in New South Wales and Victoria this summer.
And last year's Groove in the Move festival in Canberra trialled pill testing and prevented the consumption of 2 potentially lethal drugs. But despite that, ACT Liberal and Shadow Attorney General Jeremy Hansen says pill testing could lead to more drug use. It's a controversial issue, many people falling on both sides of the debate. To discuss it, we're talking to Paul Dillon from Drugs and Alcohol Research and Training Australia. It's an issue that has divided people across both lines. Where do we fall on this? The New South Wales Premier this week basically softened her approach. She said if she could be given conclusive evidence that would save lives, she would consider it. But how do you get that evidence?
Well, I think I've been very fortunate that I've visited many of the pill testing sites across Europe, so I've seen how it works, and it works in many different ways. I think my great concern about what's happening at the moment is that we are having that polarised debate. We have people on one side who are saying this will encourage, condone drug use, and on the other side, ridiculous statements like when someone dies, if we'd had pill testing, that person would still be alive. When we don't even know how that person died currently, we have no toxicology results. So I think it sits somewhere in the middle. I think our great problem with this topic at the moment is we are viewing it in isolation. We're looking at it as a strategy in itself, whereas it should be seen as an overarching, one part of an overarching strategy, a re-look at how we deal with illicit substances at festivals, nightclubs and other events.
Yeah, you mentioned that. So, of course, it's not just festivals, is it? Because you also get deaths and overdoses at private parties and nightclubs at home.
Yeah, and certainly in the UK at the moment where they have pill testing, it has been very effective at the festivals that it's worked at. We've seen reductions in hospital admissions, a whole pile of things. But we are in the UK last year, for example, we had 5 teenage girls who died, 15 and 16. Now, not one of those young women died at a festival or a nightclub. One 15-year-old died walking on a mountain, one died to take it to celebrate her exams at home, and the other one took it in a park with 2 other 15-year-old girls. Now, pill testing is not going to prevent that, but it can be seen as part of an overarching strategy. And I keep kind of emphasising that because we keep seeing it being talked about in isolation, and I think that's risky, because if we do introduce it and someone dies at a festival, then people are going to just throw their arms up and say, well, why did we do it?
Now, you mentioned it being viewed in isolation, but I suppose there have been such a significant number of deaths at festivals specifically recently. I believe it's 5 in 15 months. So with pill testing being introduced at festivals, how would it work exactly? I believe you would have to sign a waiver if you got your pill tested, that even if you were affected by it, it wasn't the fault of the chemist that tested it?
Yeah, look, pill testing is quite complicated, and it's been done, as I said, in many different ways right across the world. Even the US has limited pill testing available. I think that's part of the very key thing about if it is introduced, how is it going to run here? I think the benefit, particularly the key benefit to the wider drug-using population, is it's about finding out, getting more information about what is currently on the market. And if there is something that is particularly dangerous, and I think it's really important to remember that there is no drug that doesn't have risk. I think that's incredibly important to say that this pill, no drug testing ever says this pill is safe. They will say every drug entails risk. But if they find something that's particularly dangerous, they can get that out immediately, and particularly to health authorities. So if someone turns up and they don't know what the problem is, then go, oh, well, this substance is around at the moment.
That's an interesting point you make, though. It's as well as finding out the contents, the constituents of a pill, it's also the quantity. Because that's certainly an issue, isn't it, as far as overdoses are concerned?
Well, certainly what people, I think, are not aware of in this country, that one of the biggest problems in the UK in 2018 has been MDMA overdoses, fatal overdoses. To get an ecstasy effect, you need about 110 milligrams of MDMA. They have found pills across Europe, and particularly in the UK, of 350 milligrams of MDMA and above. So that's 3 times the dose.
What effect is that going to have on the body?
Well, unfortunately, what is happening is to the young people who have died, and a couple of the girls that I just mentioned, the teenage girls, they died from basically serotonin syndrome, and that causes overheating, and literally internal organs melt. It's a particularly horrible death. There's very little that hospitals and doctors can do once that process starts. So a real message I think that we've got to get out to young people as well is pill testing is not so much about safety, it's about information. Now, information can lead to safety, but if we have information that we have a pill that has got MDMA in, unfortunately, I speak to about 120,000 young people across the country every year, we're seeing more and more young people who are thinking MDMA means safe. MDMA does not mean safe. MDMA can be lethal if in certain situations, without a doubt. And so one of the other benefits of pill testing is, of course, when you get your pill tested, there has to be a consultation with the user afterwards, with a health professional, a trained health professional. And many ecstasy users have never seen a health professional in their life. So that's another benefit.
But it goes to that age-old argument, I guess, particularly people of that age. You say, this is very risky. Well, they're going to take it anyway.
Well, I think that's one of the big things is, do young people actually heed warnings? Do people heed warnings? I know we know speeding is dangerous. We put speed limits up, but people still ignore them. But there is evidence, certainly, in the UK, more evidence coming out, very good quality evidence to say that people are, when they find out that what they think they're purchasing doesn't contain what they're after. Some of them are disposing. Now, not all of them, but some are. And so certainly some people heed warnings. Others have never got, pill testing can't really, has nothing, one of its limitations is it can't prevent stupidity. And if someone is going to do something ridiculous like take 5 or 6 pills at a time, and then realistically pill testing is not going to help there.
You mentioned the limitations of pill testing. Obviously, it can't prevent stupidity, but also it does have other limitations as well, doesn't it? There are some sorts of designer drugs out there that potentially it might not be able to test for. I'm thinking specifically at the N-bomb in Melbourne in 2017. If a state government was to go ahead with the pill testing trial, will they constantly have to pour funds into it to make sure it's advanced enough to be able to test for these new substances?
Well, certainly across Europe we have early warning networks where they are, and these are very, very effective. One of the best things about early warning networks, and they are expensive, they do require regular funding, is that if something is located, the information is put out there by the authority, and it's believed. What we have seen in Europe a number of times is something has popped up extremely dangerous. A warning is being put out, and then literally it just disappears overnight. We know that dealers who actually have that substance throw it away, basically because they know that no one is going to purchase it. It is an expensive process. It should be, as I said, an early warning network should be part of the pill testing process, a wider kind of strategy.
Paul, just before you go, I wanted to ask you about the legal implications of that if you have a pill testing set up at a festival and an individual is taking illicit drugs to it. I mean, are there any implications there as far as the police are concerned? Would they be looking at people and saying, well, you know, you're in possession of an illegal drug?
Well, I mean, this is a great problem that police face. I mean, police have a job to do, and illicit drugs are that. They're illicit. Now, what has happened, particularly in the UK, where the pill testing groups have worked very, very, very hard, developing a very positive relationship with police, saying, look, how can we work together here? And certainly they get special dispensation for handling illicit drugs, etc. And as I understand it, in the ACT, there was lots of discussion with ACT police about how it would operate. But yes, there's a whole pile of issues that need to be sorted out. But I think if we can get it right, and we can come up with, look at everything that's happening everywhere else around the world and go, okay, let's pick the best parts of this and use it as part of an overarching strategy.
Paul Dillon, thanks very much.
Thank you, guys.
Now, 12 months on from a devastating fox attack, a penguin population in Victoria is on the increase. We teased everyone with this earlier.
Indeed.
Now, nearly one-third of the bird population on Warrnambool's Middle Island was killed last year when foxes beat the penguins' famous guard dogs back to the island.
Doesn't sound like a good story, but there have been developments since then. This summer, things are looking a bit better. That's thanks in part due to the Marima sheepdogs that are now standing guard. Our reporter Daniel Miles met the newest recruit.
Meet Mezzo. He may not look it, but at all of 18 months old, this bundle of fluff is Middle Island's fiercest penguin protector.
You've got to be careful, because give them a chance, they've got you.
Mezzo's a Marima, an Italian sheepdog that protects the island's small penguin population. Last year, 140 penguins were found dead, killed in a fox attack before the dogs could make it to the island. But 12 months on, things are on the improve.
We have at least 50 breeding penguins at the moment, so we're looking up from what we had last year, and we're really hoping that by the end of January we're going to have about 100 penguins in our colony.
Wildlife officers have been busy counting the penguins, which have returned to their burrows in healthy numbers.
You can actually see the path that the penguins come up. That's been over many, many years. That's been carved by penguins. So you'll see it's about a penguin height.
Warrnambool's penguins were made famous by the 2015 film Oddball, the story of the island's original penguin protector.
It's the best movie for 40 years. I say it's the best since Storm Boy.
Though there's some debate within the team when it comes to Swampy Marsh's founding pooch's impact.
We hear all this stuff about Oddball. Oddball spent 4 weeks on the island. Yudi has spent, and her sister Chula, have spent 8 seasons, so they're the true heroes of this project.
Before the introduction of the Marima program on the island in 2005, there were less than 10 penguins left. However, the introduction of the dogs has proven a life-saving boost, not only for the penguins, but for the entire region.
People come to Warrnambool just to see the dogs and learn about the penguins. And they've got to eat in Warrnambool, they've got to stop somewhere, so there must be quite a bit of money comes into the town because of the penguins and the dogs.
Injecting life into the economy and the environment. Daniel Miles, ABC News, Middle Island.
Well, there's a lot that lurks beneath the water of the Brisbane River, but among the fish and mangroves there, people are finding rifles, stolen goods and lost bicycles.
Yes, how are they doing it? Well, magnet fishing. Yeah, it's where environmentalism meets treasure hunting, and it's becoming a popular method of cleaning up Brisbane's waterways. Reporter Marcus Thompson tagged along for the ABC series Short Docs.
Humans have always been driven by discovery. These days, almost all of our searches are returned instantly with a click or press of a button. For magnet fishers, it's searching networks of canals, creeks and riverbeds in the hope of attracting pieces of discarded metallic history. The allure of magnet fishing is that there's no way of knowing what will surface. The pursuit of real-world discovery is the bait and hook that keeps reeling these magnet fishers back.
You have to get a really strong magnet. You tie onto it to the end of a rope. You throw it in and you pull it in as slow as you can. My name is Hamish. I'm 10 years old and I started magnet fishing.
Why do you like it?
Because you never know what you get.
Just had young Hamish out here magnet fishing on Bribey Island. With magnet fishing, of course, the fishing sucks. We haven't caught a single fish, but we have managed to disarm a couple. After much fighting, we managed to take a knife off one little bugger, and another one put up a real scrap, and we've just taken a rifle off him.
My name's Doug G. I'm from Magnet Fishing Australians. I've been magnet fishing for the last 3 years. So far this year I've had a motorbike, a safe.
And only in Caboolture could you find a shopping trolley and a ruler where someone's flogged the wheels off it.
You get push bikes, stolen goods.
And guns, pulled from the murky depths of waterways across the world and collectively surfacing on social media. Sodden munitions and the unknown stories to what got them there are the major prizes, perpetuating the magnet fishing mystique.
High crime areas, you're probably going to find weapons. If you find something really great, you're a lucky person. Each magnet's 115 kilos pull rate, so if you get something really heavy like we did before, we had 4 magnets on it and we got it up. It was a big 2.5-3 metre piece of cable.
Do you reckon that this is the sort of thing that could catch on?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Get in the older areas and I reckon you'll find some good stuff in the rivers.
And do you reckon it would get more popular?
Oh yeah, I reckon it would. Big finds. That'll be what brings everyone into it, I reckon.
There are many good fishermen and some great ones, but there are only a few that use magnets.
Just get out and give it a go rather than sitting in front of a computer on Facebook. Get out and give something a go.
Let's check the satellite image. A monsoon trough stretching across the tropics is triggering showers and thunderstorms, with tropical cyclone Penny hovering off the Queensland coast. Meanwhile, hot and dry winds ahead of a trough in central parts is bringing a higher risk of fire danger to Victoria and New South Wales. A front is also bringing a cooler change to Victoria, Tasmania and South Australia. Around the country for today in Queensland, showers and thunderstorms in the west and north, mild and humid around the coast. Showers and thunderstorms in New South Wales and the ACT. Very hot in the north with a cool change in the south. Showers in Victoria, a cool change will come later today and bring light winds across the state. In Tasmania, cool temperatures with showers and light winds mainly in the west. It will be much cooler in South Australia today, possible showers inland and windy conditions along the coast. For Western Australia, showers and thunderstorms in the north, very hot inland and warm on the south coast. And in the Northern Territory, showers and storms are forecast across the north, staying very hot and dry inland. And looking ahead to tomorrow's forecast for the capitals, possible showers in Sydney, mostly sunny in Adelaide and Brisbane. Perth will be sunny, partly cloudy in Melbourne, Canberra and Hobart. And for Darwin, thunderstorms.
A teenager has been charged with murder over the stabbing of a man at the Church of Scientology in Sydney's north. The 16-year-old boy went to the Church of Scientology headquarters in Chatswood on Thursday, allegedly stabbing 2 men there, one aged 24, the other 30. The 24-year-old was taken to hospital where he later died. People People near a bushfire in Rosedale in Victoria's Gippsland are being urged to leave. The fire has been downgraded from an emergency warning to a watch and act. The areas of Fulham, Kilmarnie South, Longford, Nambrook, Pearsondale, Rosedale, Sale and Warwick. And in the US, the White House says the president is not going to back off as he meets congressional leaders. Donald Trump is hoping to resolve the deadlock on the partial government shutdown. The Democrats, who now control the House of Representatives, have passed measures designed to end the standoff, but Mr. Trump says he will veto the plans unless they include that $5 billion he's seeking for his Mexico border wall. Australia faces a rather grim outlook on the third day of the fourth test of the SCG, but they'll resume play at none for 19 after India declared their first innings at 7 for 662.
Let's take time to see what else has been making news this week. We're talking with Professor James Arvanatakis, Pro Vice-Chancellor at Western Sydney University. James, great to see you.
Morning, how are you?
Good. Now, of course, just the beginning of a new year, so who knows what it will hold. But, it's such a volatile time politically around the world at the moment. And, then, of course, that includes the rise of the far right and how different governments and how communities are dealing with that.
Yeah, I think over the sort of 2017 period specifically, we did see a lot of far-right movements emerging, and they, especially in the US, where they gained a lot of traction. We had sort of, different groups around the world. We had the rise of Brexit and others sort of really pushing that. And there's a really interesting article by Dr. Jason Wilson this week in The Guardian that talks about the response and how there's been a really positive community response to this. It's actually shut down some of those movements. Some of it in Australia has included trying to stop people from coming. Others have included, petitions that have removed people from social media platforms to sort of not give them the air that they usually have, and others includes monitoring, taking photos and holding people to account that sort of promote violence against minority groups.
Now, on top of the far-right movement being something that the globe has struggled with, for Australia in this coming year, foreign policy could be quite a difficult area. We've already seen issues with Indonesia around the proposed idea to move Australia's embassy to Jerusalem. What sort of challenges are we expecting to face this year?
Yeah, look, I think I think 2019 will be another year of sort of turmoil. We've got, China continues to kind of have a quite aggressive stance throughout the South China.
Come on, James, where's your optimism?
sorry to sort of make it first thing in the morning. I think you see the problems in the US, and they'll continue to confront China. The Middle East remains a sort of a hotbed. North and South Korea, there's no sign of tension easing then. This places a middle power like Australia in a really difficult position, especially since our two major sort of partners are the US and China. And it's kind of interesting. I think the only way for Australia to go is to really embrace the sort of the international sort of law system that we have, the UN, the World Bank, the World Trade Organization. I think we need to sort of, and I think, a lot of experts are essentially saying, we need to sort of, partner up with other similar countries, be it Canada, working with other countries like South Africa, Brazil and so on, and try and find a way to kind of embrace international legal frameworks. Ironically, our current government is sort of almost walking away from a lot of those legal frameworks. So,
but are you saying this is also in response to Donald Trump trying to tear down some of those institutions?
Yeah, and I think so. I think when you've got a relatively small power or medium power in front of these giants, the only way to do is to actually have these kind of international frameworks to kind of really support and guide you in the way that those international relationships are managed. And I think that's one of the things that we really do need to get back to and embrace.
Now, another issue that's on the agenda now, and you would imagine it's going to be certainly until the next election, is that of the gender balance in Parliament. The number of women in Parliament, certainly the Liberals and the Nationals have been criticised for the lack of women candidates. Interestingly, just the last couple of days, we've seen pictures out of the US with Congress, a record number of women on the House floor. So how do you see it panning out as we move to the election?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges that the Liberal Party has, or the coalition has had, is they call it the gender problem, and it's pretty obvious. I think when you saw the Abbott government, less so under the the leadership of Malcolm Turnbull, but there continues to be a sort of a smaller numbers of female representation in the government. And I think one of the issues that the coalition is talking about now is the potential for quotas. And historically, the coalition's been really against quotas. They're dead set against quotas, and just not enough women coming through the normal channels. So do they now turn to quotas? Now, personally, I think targets are always your preference ahead of quotas. But if your targets are failing, then you have to think about quotas, because I mean, often it's sort of said, people say, the best women will rise and will confront. Will challenge for the seats and so on. But if your selection processes or the culture within your party excludes picking those women, then you do need to do something a lot more radical. And I think at a time when the Liberal Party is facing, if we follow the polls, real challenges with the electorate, then they do really need to do something to sort of, I suppose, reconnect with the electorate, including 50% of the electorate, which are women, right? The issue with Andrew Broad and others have not done the coalition any favours. So they really do need to kind of, I think, have a much more radical approach to reconnecting with parts of the electorate.
Now, Andrew just mentioned the record number of women being elected in the recent midterms in the US, and there's an article in the Sydney Morning Herald today about a new congresswoman. She's had a rather dramatic outburst. What's that all about?
Yeah, I mean, this is interesting. This is a really interesting challenge, I suppose, for the Democrats under this new system. She did scream at the top of her voice that she wanted to impeach Donald Trump using some quite colourful language. And this challenge is interesting for I suppose Labor, like sort of social democratic or sort of centre left parties around the world, where they're kind of, you've got these kind of I suppose pulling at different sides, almost like you've got the sort of centre right parties where you've got the sort of the more extremes of the political spectrum and those who want to be in the middle, right? And so you've got people like Nancy Pelosi who want to sort of present the more sort of centre conservative, centre left conservative position. Then you've got the rise of, I suppose, much more activist Democrats, and we see a similar thing happening in the Labor Party in Britain, and I suspect we're going to see a similar thing emerging in the ALP here in Australia, especially with some of the problems that the Greens are facing. That I think that they'll start attracting some more sort of people from the sort of more left end of the spectrum. Now this presents a challenge for those parties, because it also means that they potentially going forward could fracture not that different to some of the challenges that the coalition has faced. And I think this will be a real challenge for Bill Shorten going forward if he, I suppose, continues to take people from the more progressive end of the spectrum.
James, you're looking forward to this year?
It's going to be a challenging year. I'm looking forward to seeing what's happening with housing prices. I know housing prices has been one of those issues that you and I have talked about many times over the last few years. So it's definitely going to be an interesting time to see what goes on next.
James, thanks very much.
My pleasure, thank you.
Well, new guidance out of the UK on children's use of screens recommends that parents should set time limits and ban before bedtime. But it says there is little evidence that the use of devices is in itself harmful.
Is that good news? Well, yes, potentially. Well, the report by the British Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health says parents should worry less about screen time being toxic to health, but it has drawn up a checklist to help parents judge if their children are using screens in a healthy way. Some have criticised the research, saying the advice does not go far enough.
How much screen time via smartphones, computers or TV is okay for kids? These children from Beckenham in South London have strict limits set by their mum, including no screens before bedtime.
Yeah, I think that's really fine, because I play on it. I always play on it, really.
I have a computer upstairs, and that's where I do a lot of my homework on. But like in my free time, when I'm not doing like homework and training, I'm like, it's calm to just like chill out on my phone.
If I think back to when I was young, I think the thing for us was TV. We were on TV too much. We watched TV. What was it going to do to us? It didn't. I think it's just a new medium. I think tablets. It's a new medium. It's a new generation, and this is how they, spend their time. I don't think it's bad. I think nothing is bad in moderation.
Today's guidance says as long as children are active and healthy, then parents are best placed to decide what screen use is appropriate, and there's no need for set time limits.
There's not good enough evidence for a particular threshold, and it's really difficult pick a number here. The second is actually applying a threshold is very difficult. What about homework? What about educational things? What about piano practice with your music on an iPad? It's very difficult to actually put these things in practice. And often what happens is it just makes people feel bad about what are quite normal activities.
Many studies have shown an association between high screen use and obesity and depression. But the Royal College says there's simply not enough evidence to show a direct causal link. It might be that children with those issues are more likely to use screens excessively. In its guidance, the Royal College recommends families ask themselves 4 questions. Is screen time in your household controlled? Does it interfere with what your family wants to do? Does it interfere with sleep? And are you able to control snacking during screen time? The child health experts say there is a need for better research, especially on the effects of social media. So this guidance could change in years to come. One thing they are sure of is that children should not use screens in the hour before bedtime, because the light can slow the release of the sleep-inducing hormone melatonin.
Yes, of course, that's all about this changing world that we're living in, and certainly for the younger generations, what they're going to be doing when they reach adulthood. Much of that may well be coding, and the world of coding may be something foreign to many of us. I was sounding very old here, but to some of us it is a wonderful world. And these days, young minds are quickly joining the coding revolution and creating programs and apps for the rest of us to use.
But despite all of the appeal, less than 20% of females make up the coding world. Well, Sarah Moran from Girl Geek Academy is wanting to change all of that. She is committed to helping young women enter the industry with confidence. Sarah, hello to you. Tell us, what is Geek Girl Academy and what are your summer holiday workshops offering?
So, Girl Geek Academy was created by a group of women from the technology industry who turned around and went, where are all my friends? You know, we need more women in the workforce. And it occurred to us that one way to do that is to start teaching young girls earlier. So I learned to code when I was 5, and my co-founders, we all learned to build games when we were growing up. And we're bringing that to young girls across Victoria in a series of workshops over the school holidays.
And it's not just about encouraging these girls to attend, it's also about getting their parents on board, isn't it?
This has been a massive demand. We've been running these workshops for a little while and everyone's like, that's great that you're teaching my child, but I don't know how to do this in the home. I don't know how to do this. So we said, well, let's try and teach mothers, aunts, grandmothers, and all the role models that exist within a young girl's world and teach them coding at the same time as teaching young girls as well.
How important is it for a young girl to have an older female, be it a mother or a relative, that is involved in this and can help explain it to them?
Well, a big part of it is that technical confidence, and also, you know, how many times, I mean, man or woman, how many times do we throw our hands up and go, I don't know how to fix the remote from the TV to the PlayStation to whatever. And what that says to our kids is, if mum and dad don't understand, well, how am I supposed to? And so what's really important is if we want our girls to understand that they can be technical and they can understand how things work and how to build them themselves, having that role model just becomes, you know, way more important than, you know, some of the other initiatives we've been able to do.
So who qualifies to be a girl geek? Who can get in?
Anyone who identifies as a girl geek is welcome to come along, and that's Girl Geeks young and old. So if you are a woman wanting to code, find a young girl and bring her along. And if you're a young girl, turn around to those role models in your life and say, bring me along to these workshops.
Now, you mentioned earlier that when you're working in the technology industry, you found that there was a lack of women, other ladies you could have as your friends. You've worked in Silicon Valley, you've worked in Australia. What's the problems we're facing?
There's a multitude of problems. If there was just one problem, we'd turn around and just fix that one problem. But the problem that we're focused on solving is creating the support networks for women. So, you know, when you go into a workplace and actually there's only, you know, 1 in 5 of you are women, we'll bring those women together, make sure that they're supporting each other to succeed. And that way they feel like they're included and they have a girl gang. We say to all women who want to get technical, get yourself a girl gang.
Who wouldn't want to have a girl gang? What positive changes are you starting to notice?
Well, what's really interesting, we've been running these workshops with the young girls specifically for about the last 2 years, and they keep coming back. So we could teach them the same workshop over and over if we wanted to, but they keep coming back and demanding to know more. So we're seeing accelerated growth. So it's not just, oh, okay, I went to a coding workshop once and that felt good. It's, oh, it's inspired a hunger and inspired passion in them that they didn't understand before because they'd never been taught how to code.
All right, sign me up. Sarah Moran, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Now, you don't strike me as a geek girl.
Oh, that's very nice of you. I think it's an inner geek. I've done a lot to change the exterior geek appearance, but it's definitely still in there.
Well, now, one country where, of course, they love gaming and I'm sure they wouldn't mind saying there are a lot of geeks, is South Korea. Lots of screen time, coding, of course. Well, perhaps that's part of the reason why it has the world's lowest birth rate. And in the new year, the government in Seoul is pledging to resolve its growing demographic crisis.
What a segue. Well, it's now putting the focus on measures to improve gender equality and promote respect for women.
A young woman opens a metal hatch outside this community church, puts her newborn inside, and walks away from her child's life. The pastor who runs this baby box in Seoul says South Korea has a culture that stigmatizes mothers who give birth outside marriage.
이 미혼모들이나 10대 미혼모들이 임산부 책에 들어가지도 않아요.
Unmarried mothers-to-be and teenage mothers-to-be aren't even considered pregnant women. When teenagers are pregnant, they get expelled from school.
But that's not the only reason why South Korea now has the world's lowest birth rate.
그런 것도 있죠. 어쨌든 우리나라는 여성들.
Our country is still pretty conservative. Married life limits many things in many ways for women, in both family and workplaces. Having a baby can cause career interruptions.
The country has also been rated as the worst place for women to work in the developed world. But this year, the South Korean government is introducing a raft of measures to promote gender equality as a means to fix its demographic crisis. The government will now allow both parents to take parental leave at the same time, extend paid parental leave, and provide employers incentives to allow new parents to work fewer hours.
단기간의 효과는 보기 없겠지만 장기적으로 봤을 때
It might not bring results in a short period of time, but in the long term, raising awareness of gender equality will have a positive effect on low birth rates.
셋인 경우에는 더 힘든 부분이
Having 3 children is a lot tougher than having just 1 or 2. So my husband taking parental leave and taking care of the baby together with me does help a lot.
South Korean President Moon Jae-in, who describes himself as a feminist president, wants measures beyond the workplace. He's pledged to remove the tick box in birth certificates that shows if a baby was born outside marriage. Fertility treatments will also be offered to single women and unmarried couples, while mothers can choose their child's last name. But some South Koreans are skeptical.
저 같은 경우도 이제 뭐 둘, 셋 정도
I would like to have 2 or 3 children, but I doubt that the government would really support me. I am worried about that.
Official figures show that if the birth rate doesn't improve, South Korea's entire economy could shrink by 5% by 2060. Girish Saulani, ABC News.
Right, time for sport now. Will joins us again. So obviously a big day in cricket, the third day of the test. We've also got the tennis. We're hoping to speak to Sloane Stephens very shortly.
Absolutely. Looking. Don't know about a feminist, but Riley, I think he's effeminate. And I was saying Riley is scared of spiders. Don't you love it when spiders take up residence in your room? And then on your television? Well, I guess I should name him Riley, but he seems to have a bit of a nervous disorder. Did you notice that? He's twitching. Well, Riley's going to be a cyclone. I do know that much. And it was Riley who tossed the penny, because you've got to toss a coin to decide who's going to bat, who's going to bowl in cricket. And so it is with the penny in the pond. So we've got Cyclone Penny, and then Riley is the next name on the Cyclone name list. I reckon he's a Western Australian Indian Ocean boy. Maybe you'll go to Perth. Oh, that's where the story was. The hilarious story about the huntsman spider. It was near Perth. I just posted that yesterday.